Brown III, aka CB3. I'm a portfolio manager and financial educator, and I've been an investor for more than 30 years. As a portfolio manager, it's my job to keep our clients calm during difficult market periods. I did it in the crash of 2008. I did it in 2009 and 10 as a commentator for Fox News. And I did it in 2018 during the trade war scare. But 2020 was different. The pandemic brought a new intensity of uncertainty to all of us. When I began researching this week's show, I asked, how can I encourage them financially this week? How can I help them make their week more successful? That's why CB3 Live exists. We've been on 2 platforms in 2 cities with the goal of providing financial truth and a sense of calm about what's happening right now. Every week, I look forward to providing financial peace of mind to my clients and listeners. It's for this reason that it's a privilege every single time I start a broadcast by saying, from COVID, U.S. policy, and world economics to clarity. This is CB3 Live. Good evening, everyone. Live from Nashville. It's Thursday, May 20th. I'm Charles Brown, Portfolio Manager with CB3 Financial. We're glad you're with us from COVID, U.S. politics, the world economy to clarity. This is CB3 Live. It's a special night here at CB3 Live. We're so glad you're with us. Tonight is the Leo Klinstein, am I get that right? Klinstein interview. Okay, and we've got stock markets updates, of course, but the main thing is my interview with Leo tonight. Really excited. I've been promoting this for some time. Hope you guys come armed with tons of questions. Okay, let's get into what's going on in the market, and it's always pretty considerable, especially as earnings season winds down. For those of you that are new, please, if you're watching us on a medium other than YouTube, obviously you're on YouTube, just be sure to subscribe to the channel and click the bell for updates. You can follow me on Twitter. I tweet every single day, sometimes multiple times, as you guys know, a couple of weeks ago. You can also see us on Facebook and LinkedIn. Okay, in the world economy, and tonight I'll take questions at the end of this opening module while we're waiting for Leo to join us. And then anytime during the interview with Leo, feel free to type questions in the chat, and he and I will address those as the interview proceeds. This is going to be a little longer than normal interview because it's just an incredible story, and it's one that I really think you guys want to hear. So the Dow gave up its first place to the Russell back at 11.8 for the year, the Dow at 11.4, S&P at 10.7. So the non-NASDAQ asset classes are just kind of in a race for the best position here for the year. I'm not concerned about this. I've been telling you guys for months now, literally, that for a secular bull market to continue, we need all asset classes doing well. So we've made some adjustments. This is what the actual 1-year performance is. The assets in green, or the sectors, I should say, in green, the financials and industrials, we added in those sectors yesterday and today in capital growth and strategic growth. You'll see those. Those of you guys that are seeing trades in an email update, which you should be. We want to be transparent here if you're one of our management clients. We have pulled back a little bit on consumer discretionary and communication services and technology. Those are in yellow. So you can see actually technology on a 52-week basis now actually underperforming the S&P. And then the sectors in red are the defensive sectors. We do not believe there's any change whatsoever in our forecast as to whether or not this is a secular bull market. It certainly is, but the aggressive sectors are seeing some rotation. And I got a question today that I want to address. Charlie, I've been seeing in the past few weeks the NASDAQ's on fire and our stock investments are up quite a bit during the day, but then after the close, or near the close, they fall way back from their daily highs. What's causing this? Just curious. Well, what's happening is in the highly aggressive sectors that we have favored and have done well in last year, as you remember, 62% in CG, 63.5% in SG. People are taking profits after the earnings have been announced because they want to take the profits and move to a different aggressive sector. That's why I have this slide on the screen. They're not leaving the stock market, and they certainly aren't going into defensive sectors, but that's what's happening, okay? And it's normal market behavior. If you look at the chart here, the black line is the current recovery. All the hazy lines underneath are various periods in American stock market history and the length of time it took them to recover. Notice that this is the fastest and strongest recovery of all the recent bear markets. And this goes back about 60 years. So again, another positive bit of data. We'll look at some economic indicators and then we'll get on to our interview with Leo. So inflation, guys, I know you're seeing in the news that this is ticking up. You can't be concerned about that. See the big bar on the right? That's April's inflation number. See the big down bar 1 year earlier? That's last year. So there was deflation a year ago. So any kind of change that happens in April, which is obviously last month and now getting reported in this month, any kind of change is going to be very strong and dramatic because we had negative inflation a year ago. I'm just not concerned about this at this time, and neither is the Atlanta Fed president. Remember, there are 12 Fed districts, and I quote from all of them from time to time because I just want you to see the overview on what the other members besides Jay Powell of the Federal Reserve are saying. So this one says, this is the Atlanta president, I really take inflation as a sign of a healthy economy where there's growth, there's innovation, there's value being added, and in turn should result in better fortunes for basically everyone in the economy. Okay? LEI, Leading Economic Indicators. This is a package of indicators that's published every month without going into detail on that. The key takeaway on this 1.6% increase or growth is that this continues to mean we have widespread economic growth in all of these indicators. Remember, this isn't what affects the stock market right now. This is what affects the stock market 3 to 6 months from now. And that's why I always show you these economic indicators as well as the actual market. Another leading indicator we follow is retail sales. This number just continues to go off the chart. The average return is the blue line. And then look at that. There it is again, V recovery to basically 10-year highs in U.S. retail sales, super strong. Housing starts, again, the dotted lines are the average. The green is single-family homes. The blue are multifamily homes. The trajectory, as you see, is very strong. Another V correction here in the housing market, up to 10-year highs as far as housing starts, all right? Great numbers. In the crypto corner, well, those of you that are trading crypto or at least following the market know that Elon Musk got on his tweet account again and caused some shakeout, which I think was compounded by the Chinese jumping on top of this and saying, well, maybe we're not going to currently, let people make unlimited amounts of crypto transfers. We're going to have a certain amount reported to our taxing agencies. And then the U.S. got on board with that today, saying any transfer over $10,000, which is actually in place. If you wire somebody $11,000, that has to be reported to the IRS. So now that is going to be imposed, or at least that's what the legislation is heading in the direction of, for crypto transactions as well. So that kind of thwarted the crypto market dropped, depending on which coin you're looking at, from 20 to 25, even 30% 2 days ago, and then recovered today. But that recovery was somewhat muted by what happened with the Fed Reserve here. So this bounce is affected. Certainly cryptos are a very volatile asset class. And I've been telling you guys, this is why I'm not offering a program in this. I'm going to keep you informed because I do believe it's a very, very important asset class, but it is definitely the Wild West as far as volatility goes. And this last chart, this is something that I found that I'm just bringing to you because it's not often I can show you a chart for 5,000 years. Okay, look at the sources on this. So Global Investment Strategies, Bank of England, and Caveman Analytics. Okay, so going back to 3000 BC, look at the interest rates, and they've really just come down in history. For those of us that were around and paying attention in 1980, the year that Jimmy Carter left office, actually 81 technically, Ronald Reagan came in and got those interest rates back down, and the trajectory has been for low interest rates. But just so you know, if you're ever feeling like interest rates are pretty high, we're at a 5,000-year low right now, okay? I'm going to pause and look for questions here before I set things up for Leo. Welcome to all you guys. I may not have individually mentioned everybody here. Tom, New, and Lake Geneva, good to see you. Curious on the year Leo immigrated. Leo will answer that tonight in his first question, actually. Give everyone a good perspective. Good evening, Debbie from South Florida. And Andre, we're expecting Andre, who is another Russian immigrant, to dialogue with Leo here in the chat. So wire rubbing on the microphone. I don't know. I'll check my microphone here. Let me see. My cable was kind of mixed up there. So maybe that's better, Andre. Thanks for the heads up on that. So in the investing in post-COVID America, the most important question that people asked me at the end of the year last year was, what's the biggest concern I have coming up for investing? Is it PE ratios? Is it inflation? Is it earnings? Is it a market crash? It's actually none of those. It's what could be a threat to our basic capitalist system, which has built, in my opinion, the greatest economy in the history of the world. So a 10-year threat ago was, 10 years ago, the biggest threat was perceived from Afghanistan, Iran, and Russia, and North Korea. Now, if you fast forward to 2021, the biggest threat is China, Iran, Russia. So a lot of things there. And then COVID, of course, is number 4. All right. But it's more than that. The geopolitical stability of a capitalist country, I would posit to you, is very fragile. And it's because there are entities that want to overthrow that. And we're seeing them right here in America. Many of you know that I moved to Nashville a short time ago, and I've become aware of this Nashville area pastor named Alan Jackson. So he's an author, and some of his books come from his sermons. But in his message here, he said, he described, and this is a quote from a book that he had read actually, describes a young man who in a moment of great emotion shouts, "I wish I'd never heard of the United States again." Well, the consequences for this young man are tragic because his wish actually comes true. He never again sets foot on American soil, nor is anyone allowed to speak to him of his country. So the remaining years of his life are filled with regret at the opportunities lost. And Pastor Jackson posits, if we ignore or redesign our history to placate the whim of popular sentiment, we will forfeit much. And the underlined emphasis is mine, but this is straight from him. And I thought this was a great setup for my interview with Leo Klinstein. And the reason is because he's lived in places that many of us will never even visit. He's worked in these same countries, and he has a very different perspective than many of us that have been born and raised here. Leo has an MS in electronics from the National Technical University in the Ukraine, formerly the USSR, of course. He emigrated to the USA with his wife and daughter in 1989. So he's been here some 32 years, been in Chicago ever since. He works in new product development, field of diverse technologies, including geophysics equipment for gas and oil exploration, analytical imaging equipment. You guys can see the rest of it on the screen. Leo is one sharp guy. And we are really honored to have him here. I just can't wait for him to tell you his story. He knows the concerns of when a country is run by an oppressive government and what the outcome is for its people. And we're going to hear that tonight. Leo joins us tonight from his home in Greater Chicago. Leo, we're glad to have you here at CB3 Live. And I just need to get you switched on here. All right, we're almost there. Are you there, Leo?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, well, it'll get there.
Well, while we're waiting for the image, good evening, everybody. And,
well, actually, I don't
Charles.
think Leo, your audio's not on. That's
okay.
Guys, we're sorry. Hang with us, okay?
Maybe I should.
No, you're fine, Leo. I just need to figure out what is going on. You know what?
I can try to dial it again.
Yeah, why don't we hang with us, folks. We're gonna hang up here, and you'll just have you dial in again. It happens sometimes. All right. You still with us, Leo? His audio is on. I see it, Tom. Thanks.
Okay. We're back.
Well, you're there. Yeah, we kind of have I don't know what's going on with the screen here, but we're going to figure this out. All right, can you guys see that? I know we're not ideal here on the screen. I don't know what's happening, but this is, again, what sometimes happens with technology. So can you guys hear Leo? Let me know. All right, there you are.
Yeah. Hello, everybody.
Hey, Leo. Sorry about that. Technical
No
issues here, but we'll get it worked out. So
this is a live show, so it's the pluses and the minuses, the pros and the cons.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you for sure. So my first question for you, and we've talked obviously off camera here about this, but tell us about being a youth in communist Russia, and were you aware of the freedoms and opportunities in America? I mean, what did you really know about America? That's really where we should start, because I have a feeling that you probably didn't have the same impression of America in your teens that we did, or your 20s that we did here as members of society in America.
Certainly not. The information flow was very carefully managed by the Communist Party and their propaganda apparatus and security services and the media. So what was printed typically was focused on the shortcomings and problems in the American society. And there was a good sampling of literature by American writers, but it was mostly the writers who wrote about hard times in America. The Great Depression. Steinbeck, The Grapes of Wrath. Theodore Dreiser. The trilogy about the capitalist in Chicago, and of course the works of Ernest Hemingway, which they're not necessarily anti-capitalist, but a lot of his work has this strong anti-war, anti-fascist sentiment. Take farewell to the arms, or for whom the bell tolls, and so on and so on. Well,
they're using the macabreness of those novels to paint America that this is what pervades in America, as opposed to one author's opinion of it.
Sure, certainly. And then as far as the current news, whatever was on the state-run TV or in state-run newspapers was focusing on unemployment, union workers striking, treatment of minorities, Vietnam War, atrocities by, and there are certainly undeniable fact. Every war is a brutal act, and unfortunately there are people killed, and sometimes even our best men and women in uniform go above and beyond what is allowed in modern civilized military conflict.
Sure.
But those things would always be taken out of content. In a way, it's not very different than what you see today with regards to, let's say, police. You take an isolated incident and you try to multiply a million times and make everybody else look better. Remember the infamous Lieutenant Kelly and the whatever the name of that village in Vietnam in 1968, right, and the massacre there. And it was just regurgitated and regurgitated and on and on and on and on. So that was sort of forming the opinion, and still there were very few real things. I remember there were a few movies every now and then that would be dubbed in Russian and run in cinemas. One that I really liked was 3 Days of Condor. I mean, those of you old enough to remember it. With,
Robert Redford, yeah.
Robert Redford. And I watched it already in America again in rerun in English. And it was still a good movie. It's about this, conspiracy by some nefarious secret branches. But a movie like that in America runs along with 100 others that tell some other story. And obviously in USSR that was the only one. But I can tell you this: I watched it and didn't care about the viciousness of the secret services. I was siding with the hero. The story was great. So
One of the things you said,
whatever his politics are, he is a great actor.
yeah, no question. And we find that in America, that sometimes actors are very different in real life than they portray on the screen. One of the comments that you had in your notes here that we talked about was that life in America is totally different. It's not just about the economic issue, but it takes time and effort and willingness to appreciate the freedom of choices and managing those freedoms with care. That's I just have never thought of it. Again, because I've lived here my whole life. I've only even left the country, I think, 4 times. Managing those freedoms with care. What does that mean for someone who's now come to America and really has, ability to do anything you want with the successes that you've had because of coming here?
I mean, I'll kind of step back a few years and think about the perception of most would-be immigrants before they come to America. Most people don't understand what life in America is like, and their perception is, I will live kind of like what I'm living now, but much better economically.
Right.
And yes, as I mentioned, most immigrants end up living significantly better economically, some way beyond their expectations. But that's not the only thing that's important. What's important that life is America, the relationship with society and the people, those relationships are different, and it takes time, effort, and willingness to appreciate the freedom of choices. And you have to be careful with your choices, and you have to be cognizant of, good choices, bad choices, how to manage those choices, how to manage relationships. America is a very fast-moving country, the fastest in terms of social change and its adaptability to changes, and that's what made America great. And people who come from more traditional societies, which is just about everywhere else in the world, they might have difficulty keeping up with these changes and adapting them, whether it's relationship in the community, a relationship with your neighbors, a relationship with people who came from other countries, and even a relationship within your family, because you cannot control your kids in America the same way they're controlled in more traditional societies. It just doesn't work.
We got a question from Lynn Yates here. What time frame are you speaking about so far? We haven't identified a time frame, so let's maybe do that.
I came in late '89, so have lived in the Chicago area ever since. So obviously the words of wisdom didn't appear on the second day of arrival. That's something that I have been thinking about, since.
But your Ukraine time was obviously from birth, and I think, I'm not trying to give away your age, but from the 50s.
Yes, I was born in 1957, so I was 32 years old when we crossed. I turned 32 in Rome, in Italy, when we were waiting for U.S. visas.
Can you briefly, because I know this about you from your personal story, there was a situation where you got out of Ukraine, you ended up going to...
Just one qualifying answer for the ladies in the audience. I'm happily married.
Okay, good. That's great. But you did have to go through Italy as an intermediate to getting to the United States, because it wasn't exactly easy for you to even get out of Russia.
Getting out was the most difficult thing. Getting in was just a journey. Getting out was really, you have to make a huge effort. And normally that there was virtually no choice for most people in the society. Myself and my family, we benefited, quote unquote, if one could consider that a benefit, from being Jewish, because there was a Congress amendment, I believe it was authored by Jackson Vinnick in the 70s, that allowed for some limited immigration of Russian-speaking Jews from the former Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union and the Communist Party used it as a negotiating tool to get some concessions from the West, like, oh, we'll get so many thousand Jews out, and in return you will give us, whatever,
Sure.
wheat, supplies, concessions in some political arena, and it will, the faucet will be turned on and then turned off, and then a family could be approved or denied the right to exit, and if you apply and you are refused, you really lose everything. You lose your job. My wife and I, we quit our jobs. We had to give our apartment and pretty much sold everything we owned. And
so it sounds like as retribution or vindication.
Well, I forgive them. I mean, I'm grateful that I was able to get the hell out. So, well, I mean, I don't know, retribution, vindication, but it was not considered, a good citizenry. You are a traitor. Basically, you are considered a traitor to your country. You're leaving. You're trying to go somewhere else. And nominally, our visas were for Israel, but we had a choice to change our mind once we got to Vienna. And but basically, we lost our citizenship. We lost everything.
Wow.
The property, the apartment, and we never knew if we will ever see our family again. We didn't know that the Soviet Union will break apart. If I knew it will break apart, I'll probably short some stock or whatever. But I didn't even know what stock was or how to short it.
But you learned all that, obviously, when you got here. Keith asks, did you have friends or family or anybody to land with, so to speak, when you hit the shores?
We had here in Chicago, we had distant family. I had a couple of second cousins. And we also later found that my wife had some pretty close family that we have never seen before. Basically, it's her grandmother's brother immigrated a month before World War I broke out. And he never came back, obviously. And then his son he still is. He is in the 90s. We're good friends. He is a first cousin to my mother-in-law. So we reconnected with them. But really, they didn't play any material, any material change in our decision. It just, you have to choose a spot.
Yeah.
What did I know about America? Obviously, I knew the geography. I had an atlas, and I knew that New York and San Francisco and Chicago, and I didn't want to go to New York. It didn't have a very good reputation in the 80s. Los Angeles was considered a resort town.
Well, you knew the language too, so that's a huge help. So, I mean, I guess you would recommend anyone coming in learn the language before you decide to emigrate, and even with your degrees,
absolutely.
It still helps.
You have to learn know English, know how to drive the car, and if you have a trade, that wouldn't hurt either.
Yeah. So once you got here, what was the plan? So you land on the ground in 1989. I answered the one question. Have you been back? Before we do that, question from Anova. Have you been back to Ukraine or Russia since coming here? I'm not sure if you can see the questions, but.
Yes, I do. I was just not paying attention. It's in a different screen.
You're fine. No, I'll call them out to you.
Yes, I have been, but many, many years ago. In early 90s, I was reached out by my former business associates from university in National University in Belarus, and they suggested a business venture. So I started a company with an American friend of mine, and we visited Belarus twice, and from there we took an illegal trip to Ukraine, overnight train. At the time, the borders were not strictly enforced, so I brought my American friend who doesn't speak a word of Russian or Ukrainian, but he is of Polish origin, so he looked like everybody else.
This sounds like a James Bond movie. You were going there on business, but it was an illegal trip.
Well, the trip was legal on business, but my family at the time was still in my hometown in Lvov, and we made like a, 1 night, 2 day trip on a train. So
Okay.
that was, but that was in late '92. I have not been back since
We still didn't
late
get.
'92.
Oh, you haven't been back since '92.
Correct.
Oh, okay. So on your notes here, you turned in your papers to emigrate. Obviously, you immigrated, but you were
Yes.
emigrating from Russia. Had to quit your
Correct.
job, hired a private tutor. That's how you got the English going. Tell us a little bit about the Italy connection, and I think was there Austria in there somewhere? I mean,
Yes. Basically, the way the route for people with similar background used to work at the time. Your first country of asylum was Austria, and
not
we
Switzerland,
got to
which is
not Switzerland.
neutral. So
No, I mean Austria. Austria was, they were doing some humanitarian work, whatever they were. And Austria was actually neutral as well. Austria did not belong to NATO at the time. It did not belong even to European Union at the time in 1989.
okay,
So it was Austria, neutral enough. And after 10 years of Soviet army occupation between 45 and 55, I'm sure they still had enough underground agents there to do whatever they needed to do. Anyways, we boarded the train. It was even difficult to buy train tickets because in summer of 1989. So we went to Moscow. We got our visa stamped in Czechoslovakian embassy and in Austrian embassy, and we bought tickets to get on a train that went to Bratislava, Slovakia.
and they assumed you'd be coming back. I mean, you're not disclosing. We're saying goodbye.
No, they didn't care.
Okay.
No, they knew we're not coming back.
Okay.
We lost it. We lost citizen at the border. So how do you come back?
Yeah.
You could come back and get on your knees and scream and say, please let me in. I realize I'm an idiot and the Soviet Union is so wonderful and those capitalists are pigs. And
Yeah, who does that?
and I'm sure there are a few people who did that, but that wasn't our plan, obviously. So we went to this border crossing town in Transcarpathia. It's a region of Ukraine on the other side of Carpathian mountains, bordering Hungary and Slovakia. And there is this famous station called CHOP, the last station. So you get there, you go through customs. They turn your stuff upside down. They found some letter written by some friends for other friends in Italy, and it had some non-complimentary jokes about the Soviet Union. So, and we didn't even read the letter because we were so in a hurry.
Sure.
But the border agent did read it and gave us some hell. So declined our right to take some other possessions with us because we didn't have any currency. We left the country with $400 that were sewn in my underwear because I had to protect it as my family jewels. And,
so to speak, was it in U.S. dollars or rubles?
No, in U.S. dollars. They allowed us to exchange some rubles for dollars. A total amount for a family of three, about $400.
Wow.
And the rest of our possessions effectively were, bags of goods that we intended to sell in flea market in Austria and in Italy. So we gained very good experience, as street peddlers.
Street peddling to basically try to raise the funds to be able to get the flight.
Sustain.
Yeah, to sustain yourself, because it's not like you're coming over to a job with a health benefit and a 401k. You had nothing like that.
Right. Well, I mean, the Hebrew Immigration Society provided some help, and we signed for a loan to repay the cost of transportation, the airfare and such. But you're living in Italy, and you want to be able to buy a cup of coffee. You want to be able to pay rent for a very meager apartment. Sometimes it's a room that is shared in an apartment with several rooms with other families. And you want to buy groceries, and you want to buy an ice cream to your kid and that sort of stuff. So
Sure.
And you want to have some cash when you come to America, because everybody knows you get to America, you have to buy a car. If you want to get a job, you have to have a car, and you have to be able to rent an apartment. So whatever the word of mouth was telling us about the valuables to be taken from Soviet Union, we tried to load up with these goods and then sell them in the flea market. And I can assure you that I had zero experience as a street peddler, but
When I look at your resume, that's not one of the items on there, but you clearly have.
didn't see it.
You,
And yes, and I also studied Italian with that tutor. So the idea was to be somewhat fluent in Italian. And
all of which helped you here, I'm sure. Before we actually land in the U.S., then, I've got a question from Kei Naramatsu, who has his own story. Realistically, how difficult was for you and your family to live in the U.S., Ukraine and Russia compared to the U.S.? And I'm wondering if you'll throw in the diaper story. I know this story.
Sure, yeah.
Short version of it. Just the standard of living and the 100-year-old pipeline.
The standard of living was much lower, but surprisingly, it didn't bother us very much. I mean, first of all, myself, my family, and my wife, we were relatively lucky. Our parents had reasonably good living standards by standards of that country, and they were professionals. My mom was a medical doctor. My dad was an engineer, a successful engineer. My mother-in-law, she was a dentist, and my father-in-law was a dental technician. So they were able to earn a reasonable living even by those standards. More importantly, through whatever history, they were able to secure apartments because most apartments were state-owned, but getting one was a real challenge.
Sure.
And if you have an apartment and even you have to live with your parents, you have some kind of life. I mean, you cannot compare it to life in America, but you're young. Everybody lives the same way. You're not much worse than the rest. It's okay. But the story that I told you was my daughter was 10 months old, and we lived at the time with my parents-in-law in a very small apartment. But we had our room, 110 square feet, and there was one bathroom in the apartment. I mean, hey, how bad could it be? So
that's what it was the norm, yeah.
It was the norm. It was better than the norm. So one day, water main breaks, and that apartment building was in a newer part of the city, a neighborhood of about 300,000 people, and the water was supplied from the mountains, and it was a newly built pipeline, maybe only 5 years old pipeline, supplying fresh water. And it was built poorly, and it broke. So all of a sudden, 300,000 people don't have fresh water, period. And it's summer, and
sounds like Texas.
Well, not quite as hot, but the worst part was that disposable diapers were simply unknown. And the diapers were simply clothes that you wash in, like a laundry. So a 10-month-old baby produces lots of soiled diapers, you can imagine. So there was no way to wash them. I will collect 2 big suitcases of soiled diapers, get on the city bus, and everybody will make room for me because, literally I was stinking. And I will go downtown where my parents used to live. And downtown was supplied by a 100-year-old water main that was built in the times of Emperor, Franz Joseph II.
Yeah, I mean, that's just incredible.
Of Austria-Hungary. So those old pipelines still was holding water after 2 world wars and numerous civil conflicts and whatnot. And I will go to my parents and wash all those diapers and load them back. And that's how it happened. Lasted about 3 weeks. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Right, exactly. So
my wife is winking at me that apparently my daughter is watching from Las Vegas. So
okay, good. Yeah, arena. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
So once you got here, how long did it take to get your footing? I mean, you came over with $400. You went back in '92 on trying to ground.
No. I left old country, the Soviet Union, with $400. In Italy, we were street peddlers. Remember, and and so we came to the States with a whopping $3,200.
So then you just immediately start going on interviews, or because I know you're with Duquesne
immediately.
now.
We came. It was early December, and we stayed with my second cousin for a couple of weeks until we found a place of our own. Obviously, you have to put security deposit, and it was very, very basic place, obviously. But we were happy to have our own, apartment with the keys. And initially, you just put your linen on the carpet, and here, carpet is
and
not
running
that,
water too. So
and running water, exactly. So, and I had this one company in mind that I found back in the old country. They were in the similar business, and I just picked the phone and called the company, and I said that I wanted to talk to the president. And guess what?
they took your call.
They took my call, and it turns out it was a very small company. He said, "Look, we are really not hiring, but I would be interested in talking to you." I used some big names of Professor So and Professor So that he met in some conferences. So I guess that sort of tickled his ego. And
so even in those years, Leo, you were doing the research that people do now on LinkedIn, but you didn't have LinkedIn, and
right.
you were prepping for the interview. It's just amazing.
Yes, I prepped and I prepared a resume, because while in Italy I got this book, How to Write a Resume. So I read it, and then I wrote a resume, and then once we came over, some cousins helped me edit it, and I didn't have a computer, so they printed it for me. So I'm going to an interview. I'm dressed literally like a peacock. I'm wearing my best wool suit with fancy necktie, well overdressed for the place. And then I arrived, and I didn't have a car, so I had to take 2 buses to get to that company in Skokie. And
wow.
we lived in Rogers Park in the city. So I come there, and I went there on Sunday to scout the place to make sure that I make it on time.
So now, if we fast forward from there to today, and then we're going to go back, but you manage how many, 25, 30 people at the company where you are, Duquesne?
At the peak, I had about 65 people in St. Charles. Now we have distributed. I have fewer, but literally a few months ago, but I had 65 engineers just in the United States, and then kind of on a dotted line engineers in our foreign locations, but more like on a dotted line.
And during COVID, you guys were producing a lot of PPE, and you were supervising like all over the globe. And this is I'm still going back to leaving with 400, getting that to 3,200 being a street merchant, coming to America, taking 2 buses for your first interview. And this is why I thought this story was so important, is that when we hear so many people complaining in this country that it's not a fair country, that there's not enough opportunity, you literally started with almost nothing. And 65, I mean, it's astounding to me. It just is.
I could still complain if you guys want to hear. I mean, I can complain, why is it only 65, not 650? But that's a different story.
Yeah, no. Questions here. Curious if Leo experienced or saw bribery in the Ukraine USSR, because you did work there for 10 to 11 years, I think. So
sure, yeah, 10 years, sure.
What was the bribery? I guess in the business world, Andrei's not specific, but
well, I mean, some routine things would be. Something that most Americans will find it difficult to comprehend in the Soviet Union, because of the absence of market forces and the absence of market economy. The sales job and the procurement job or purchasing job were flipped upside down. So here in the States, the most important person is a salesman, the hunter who brings the bacon, so to speak.
Sure.
And other functions are sort of supporting the sales, whether it's engineering, manufacturing, procurement, supply chain, whatnot.
Obviously, it has to have a product, but getting the brand out there. And Duquesne is an international brand, located in St. Charles, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. So, but back in the old country, the difficult to find commodity were the components, the commodity. So being in purchasing required skills like U.S. salesmen. There were virtually no salespeople in Soviet Union because you didn't have to sell your product. Your product was already distributed, and you already had assigned dedicated customers. So
and no competition really, because
yeah, maybe another factory was making. Let's say there are 5 factories making TV sets. So, but the factory in our home city had its own customers, and the other factory had its own customers, and they didn't overlap.
and no motivation to really excel.
Don't buy one. Yeah. So everybody was happy with the way it worked. So that's bribery. Yes, if you cannot find what you need, then you need to resort to some creative negotiation technique. Hey, look, I brought you some really nice fresh kielbasa that is only available in my hometown and not available in yours because all you have, or a bottle of vodka, or I mean, if you're really going for something really important, there's an envelope with those little pieces of paper that have Vladimir Lenin's face on it.
Right. When you and I first started talking, you mentioned to me that you were concerned. We both share concerns about the political trends in the U.S. And you experienced this, of course, in the USSR. And I've said that it seems to me that we're heading towards communism. At least there is a contingency of American citizens that does not want to have capitalism, that wants to rewrite our history, that wants to make a whole lot of changes, increase the size of the Supreme Court, anything that they can do to gain power, basically. And you said that you didn't really think it was socialism, and I don't want to say what you said because I want you to say it. What are your concerns about what you're seeing happening in this country? And this is what I think directly affects the listening audience here as investors, because if we lose the ability to have a capitalistic, motivated, entrepreneurial environment here, because those motivations are taken away by a totalitarian government, we are in deep, deep trouble. And you're seeing that from a perspective of someone that's lived under that. Could you tell us where you think this country's headed with the political establishment that wants to go in a direction away from capitalism?
Sure. My comments were, and still are, that the classic Marxism economy and social economic order that I was familiar with in the days of Soviet Union is not likely what the current progressives are peddling. They're peddling something that is more akin to the system as it was in Nazi Germany or modern Russia or modern China. Essentially, it's a very intricate relationship, interlaced relationship between large corporations and government. And, in a way, the quote-unquote revolving door in Washington, D.C. lately, when people of certain administration leave their government job and they go to work for private sector, it's starting to reminisce this government industrial complex. And
cronyism.
Most of these cronyism, nepotism,
sure.
What you see in modern Russia or China or back in the days of Nazi Germany. And I'm not comparing these regimes in terms of their brutality, in terms of concentration camps and such, even though they have some similarity. I'm talking pure about the economics, the enterprises. Who owns most enterprises were privately owned still in Germany, but they were working for the government, and government had the final say what it is you're going to make and when.
So they were quasi-nationalized. For those of you who are not familiar with the term nationalized, it's when a government comes in, and this actually happened during the Trump administration when the government in a very limited capacity came in and said no to a certain company. You're not going to make the widgets you're normally making. You're going to make masks. And we have the ability to do that on a temporary basis. And then, of course, that doesn't stay that way. But when a government comes in and directs private enterprise and essentially takes them over, that's called nationalizing. And that's what you are talking about.
Even Duquesne, before it was located in St. Charles, the company was called Operadio. And during World War II, the government came to Chicago area, and they met with the owners of Operadio and the owners of Motorola. And at the time, the companies were about the same size. And they said,
Wow.
Motorola, you're gonna make a radio for the army, and
This is
Operadio,
Roosevelt.
yes, and the Operadio, you're gonna make communication systems for the Navy. And the owner said, well, what if we don't? Well, then we'll take the factory away from you, and you'll get it back after the war. So they saluted, they agreed,
Wow.
and they made a lot of money making those pieces of equipment. So if you look at the war movie, you will see that infamous what was the smallest radio in the armed forces during World War II, with the traditional phone receiver made by Motorola. And many movies about the Navy, you will see Operadio or Duquesne signed in PA systems on Navy ships. And from there, Duquesne went on to work with NASA and develop the pinger for the for the black box. That's how
Right.
these days they find God forbid, when the plane goes down in the body of water.
What would you say to concerned American citizens that are watching this either live or on playback? Because you have lived in a totalitarian existence where you were born, you left by, I would call, the skin of your teeth, but you made it, you got over here, you got to that interview with 2 bus rides, that led to the next job and the next job, and now almost anyone would consider you a very successful and contributing American. What would your advice be to those of us that are very concerned that this country could be headed back to what you had as a youth, and what can we do as citizens other than write our congressman and woman to intervene on our behalf? What would you say to those of us that share your concerns?
First of all, what I would say is trust your gut, and maybe that sounds a little simplistic, but don't believe people who are telling you that you're a racist or a bad person or a capitalist pig. I look in the mirror every morning, brushing my teeth and getting ready for work, and I know who I am. I value other people. I work in a company where we have to help our colleagues and our customers, and we live in the community, and we raise our children. Most Americans are good people, and if your opinion is slightly different from what you hear during this relentless propaganda campaign from mainstream media and social sources, don't believe it. Use your common sense. Think about the fundamental. I don't want to sound overly religious or to peddle certain religious beliefs, but 10 Commandments is a pretty darn good foundation for living your life properly. And if you don't believe in the higher divine power, Lord Almighty, okay, take that account number back, and you're back to 9 commandments. If you obey by those, you're doing really well.
Well, and I agree with you for sure. Of course, I quoted Pastor Alan Jackson earlier today, and this story he told, and basically he came and said, if we ignore or redesign our history, that's what's happening right now, is there is a contingency of American citizens that want to redesign, reconstruct our history, and they're doing it basically to placate the whim of popular sentiment, and I'm quoting him again. And if we allow this to happen, we're going to lose a good portion of not only our history, but the greatness of this country. It's just not in our best interest. So let me, while you're getting your camera straight there, let me just check the chat box here and see if I've mentioned anything else. It looks like your daughter enjoyed the diaper story. That's great. So you were there when it happened. Kay, I agree. Most Americans have no idea how good they have it. That's for sure. Nellie, for sure. Let's see, Dr. J. So during the war, it was difficult to get raw materials if they weren't being used for the war effort. I would think procuring raw materials in industry, and you certainly in a business that uses raw materials, has got to be easier in the States with just the natural resources we have than it is in Russia.
Absolutely, and it's not just the natural resources, because we're living now in such a global economy that even though, let's say, America has abundance of, say, iron ore, we don't really make a lot of steel. So a lot of steel is coming from other countries.
We used
but
to.
We used to, yes, but I'm talking about the current day situation.
Right.
The supply chain is developed so well, you can get pretty much anything you want, unless there is a shortage. Like, for instance, today there is a severe shortage of semiconductors, and it affects most industries, because hardly anything is made these days without semiconductors. And the more complicated your product is, the more it is dependent on semiconductors. So we're hearing huge delays from just about everybody.
Massive delays, yeah.
And increases in the price for steel and aluminum. And in our industry, obviously, we need steel, aluminum, and titanium. Yes, in the old countries wasn't just buying the commodities. It's finding out the specifications. Like, engineers were supposed to design electronic circuitry, but the data books were hidden in. You had to get a permission from a security officer who was like a retired KGB officer, because they were guarding
retired KGB. You said?
Yes. So they had special access library that contained data sheets for important electronic components.
Right.
But yeah, I have to have it in my fingerprints to really do a good job. So I have to go to that library, check it out, bring it back at the end of the day, check it out tomorrow morning, and just a total waste. For instance, copying like Xerox type equipment was almost unheard of. Not because the technology was so daunting, but because the government was afraid of people printing, anti-government propaganda or books or
so that is truly the totalitarianism that we are hearing about now, where you have this corporate media trying to, basically boot people off Twitter, boot people off Facebook, boot people off YouTube if they don't agree with it. That sort of behavior that you just described is happening right here in 2020 and 2021 in America. No wonder you would be concerned.
Absolutely, and frankly, I still can't believe that it's happening, and people are taking it with applause. You're talking, there are 100 million people who don't like it, but there's another 100 million who, useful idiots. You don't want to use, derogatory terms, but
well, you're entitled to your opinion on this show. You can say whatever you want. You made another amazing comment here that I wanted to dig into before we run out of time here. But you said one of the things I had to figure out, or one thing people have to realize, is there's a difference between the imaginary America and the real America. What does that mean to you, and what does that portend for us as investors?
Well, I guess it goes to my earlier sentiment when I said that you don't live the same life as before, but better economically. You live differently. Your values change. You become more mobile. In the old world, in the old country, it wasn't uncommon for multiple generation families living in the same area of the town, the same village. In the States, and now the trend is accelerating even more. Mm-hmm. You have portable skills. What is really important? Is it your furniture? Is it that rug that you have near your fireplace? Or is it the knowledge and your financial, instruments?
And freedom.
And freedom to make these choices, and freedom to make, to be able to pack up and move. For instance, in the old country, if I live in the city, I cannot move to another city without having government permission to do so. And the larger the city, the more difficult it is to get that permit. Like, for instance, everybody wanted to be in Moscow because, it's a capital, it has the most opportunities and the best supply of, food and goods and whatnot. You cannot get an apartment. You cannot get a job without having legal right to live in the city, and in that right should be a stamp in your internal passport. Here in the States, I don't like being let's say our friend Charles Brown III. He didn't like being in Glen Ellen, and he packed up and under the cover of night moved to suburban Nashville, and then said, "Hello, I'm here in Nashville."
And the state of Illinois still wants me to pay my state income tax, for last year.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, they're not real. It's really, they're companies that move from Illinois and they lose all that state income tax. Many of you know that Tennessee has no state income tax. So let me just check the questions here, and we'll let you go. This has been wonderful. What are your thoughts on the immigration issues? Here is from Nellie. That'll take some time. Kate asked, what year did you become a citizen? You came here in '89. Were you actually a citizen?
Yes, 95. I mean, we got on with the program right away. So summer 95.
So it took 6 years, though.
5.5 years.
It would have taken far less time if you just come over the southern border. I guess you know. Sorry, I shouldn't say
well,
that.
you don't get the passport. You will get in the country, but you still don't get
right, exactly. No, I get
it.
Not
Not yet. You give Joe and Kamala another term, and it will happen, yes.
6 years. That answers Kate's question. Nellie says, what are your thoughts on the immigration issues here? Obviously, that southern border, although, there are other issues. But
look, I mean, my thoughts are very simple. We have to have secure border, and we have to have modern, meaningful, humane, business-like immigration policy, which means let people in based on merit, based on skill, and based on the need, and create a comprehensive guest workers program. We need help in agriculture. We need help in various industries. Let's give people opportunity. Not every immigrant coming through southern border wants to live here. Some want just to support their family, and we have great need for people with skills in construction industry and agriculture.
Sure.
We cannot lump everybody together. It's very easy to implement. All we need to find goodwill and common sense. And common sense, unfortunately, is something you don't buy at Walgreens anymore.
Common sense is uncommon. So, Leo,
Yes.
This has really been wonderful. Thank you for sharing your story. And I just, I'm sure for all the viewers tonight, want to thank you for your time and candor. It is such a dramatic difference from how I was raised, and it has helped me, I'm sure others too, but just to see, wow, we can't take anything for granted, because literally in your lifetime, you could see an ABA. I mean, you could see this return if we live long enough, and if the trajectory of where the ultra liberals or far left, whatever you want to say, that want to radically change America, if that's allowed to continue, from what I heard earlier tonight, you think that it's headed towards a Nazi Germany, totalitarianism, Russia, China, more than just a Sweden, which is what they're saying that they believe.
No, it's not Sweden. Sweden is a sweet country, and but I still believe we will overcome. And I get my optimism from this great book by George Friedman, The Storm Before the Calm. So I highly recommend all of you to read it. I'm reading it for the fourth time. So it's non-partisan, but it's an very good read and very smart book. And
I do recommend it. I've started it. I haven't finished it, but I do get his articles. And if you guys follow my Twitter, when you see those comments that I'm making and I say continued, I'll take an article of his and I'll publish it over 10 days on my Twitter feed. So if you guys are interested. Leo, thank you again, and wishing you the very best. We will see you again soon, I hope. Guys, stay with me.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
All righty. All right. So any questions, guys, let me know. I probably answered everything here, I think. Americans need to wake up. Yeah, Andre, we need to get your input next time because you've got a story of your own as well, I'm sure. But just want to thank you for being here. Hope you got something out of this. Hope you learned something. Hope you got a new passion for what we have here in America. I always end with this from 2 Timothy, for we have not been given a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, love, and of sound mind. And guys, this has just been a great evening. Wishing you all the best for this weekend. I'm going to take Memorial Day off that weekend, and so I won't be here next Thursday night, but I will see you Monday night. If you have any questions for Leo, you can send them through me, and I'll forward them to Leo, and I'm sure he'll answer you privately. But from COVID to clarity, this is CB3 Live. It's Thursday, May 20th, and we have just had a wonderful evening here. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We will see you next time.